Empire.
Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Con Report wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Empire Media. That's AMPIRE. Always much appreciated when you tune in. And of course, you can always read my work on ESPN.com. And don't forget, now that training camp starts on Wednesday, I will be doing daily practice reports. So you know what happened every day, the highlights, the lowlights, whatever, you'll be up to date. So for those watching on YouTube, you can see that the voice of the Commanders, Bram Weinstein, is joining me right here. So let's get right to Bram. Bram, let's start with, I know we're a couple days removed and we're going to be talking about training camp. We're not just going to be talking about ownership, but you're a longtime Washington fan. You've covered this franchise for a few decades, and now you're the voice. What was Friday like witnessing that for you?
Thursday and Friday too. I mean, I was,
Yeah.
I think I want to shout out my colleagues over at, the other radio stations that threw those parties. And it was just so reassuring to see that. I've been saying to a younger generation of people, cause I'm 50 and I'm like, you don't know what it's like here when they're good. You don't understand it. And maybe it'll never be like that again. I could be naive and thinking that it can be like that again, but I know what it was. And like, it was so reassuring to see the reaction to this. And this is without them really, they're saying all the right things. They haven't done anything yet. Not that, they've been here a week, where they're allowed to do anything. They haven't done anything yet. But just the idea that they understand what's at stake, what it was, what it can be, what the connection is to the community. I fell in love with this team, John, when I was a kid, growing up in the 80s, glory days, because they unified our community. I mean, it's really as simple as that. Like everybody loved this team. Everybody rooted for this team. It changed the mood of the city. It changed the mood of the area. I went to a Super Bowl parade where they shut down every school system in the area, every single one of them. That's what this team means. And it just felt like, I keep saying, like, you just wait. One day you'll see. And then this occurred. And just for 24 hours, 48 hours, it looked like everyone was back on board, or at least had this euphoric feel to it.
Why can't it be like that again? If they win, why wouldn't it get like that again? Like this because now you have, if they win, you now have a team that's would be winning with the group in a situation that you can take a lot more pride in, right? Yeah. So why couldn't it get back to that point?
I don't know. I mean, like, it's just been a long time since I think the community has had that kind of connection. It's been shown in ticket sales and shown in some interest. And then, I think at this point, I want to look ahead. We can have a conversation about Dan Snyder another time if you really want to look back at it. But I really think that, we've talked about that for 20 years.
Right.
And 20 years is a long time, there probably are a lot of people that became fans of other teams or tuned out, or just, if they're going well, I'll pay attention. But if they're not, I'm going to get upset. And then the last few years with, what's been publicized about what's been going on, I don't blame a lot of people for being mad. I talk about this a lot. I do a lot of events, especially starting now during the season. I'm asked to do a lot of events and I meet a lot of people. And it was always like, I would always lean on, there's no ambivalence for this team at all. Like, go anywhere, talk to anybody about it. There's no ambivalence about it.
Right.
There was anger. I mean, like, just pure anger. I would do these panels and we'd be talking about the team, and invariably somebody would ask something about ownership, and you could feel just the air get sucked out of the room, and it would start these conversations. And I'm like, God, it's a football team. We all clearly, like, because everyone is angry, they care, and I just really hope that we're all breathing a little easier today. The clouds have lifted today. Hopefully this group will shepherd in the type of things that, we hope they're going to win. But I will lean back on what they said that I think is very, very important outside of just winning. Obviously winning is a big deal, and hopefully they will. It's very hard to do, though. I don't want to put that kind of pressure on them. It's very, very, very hard to do. But what I do want them to make good on is that everyone's proud of this organization. Again.
Right.
All of them kept talking about that. And I think that there was a loss of pride. When I tweeted out something the other day, just like, how are you all feeling today? Somebody replied something to the effect of, it doesn't feel immoral to root for them.
Right.
And I felt that that was a valid criticism.
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
There were so many things you could look at and go, I love the team. I love the NFL. I love what they mean for us. I love McLaurin and Allen and Chase and all these players that are very easy to like. They have a very likable team. Yeah. But there's so many other things. It's hard to raise your hand and say, I'm all on board on this. And with one massive $6 billion transaction, at least everybody gets to root for them again and feel good about it until told otherwise. But, I'm putting on beyond rose-colored glasses for this group. They have said all the right things. I know they have, like, the managing director, I think that's what he's going by, has a history of working with teams. You don't hear bad things about those organizations. No. So I'm very optimistic about what has come in here, what's about to happen, and what the next few years are going to look like.
Right. And listen, this ownership group, I know it's a big one, but the main players are dramatically different than the type of people that Dan Snyder would surround himself with. And that matters because Josh Harris is not going to be out there every day running things. All these guys aren't. But if you surround yourself with those kind of people, and I'm a massive believer in, you are defined by the people you surround yourself with, and the people you surround yourself with help you get to where you need to go. And they in this case, they can carry out your vision. And so I think that's one of the strengths they have. Now, when they win, I don't know, but I certainly like their chances a lot better than what we've seen, and their ability to put together something than what we've seen the last couple of decades to sustain winning. And I think that, it's who you surround yourself with. And when you look at that, you look up on that stage and, I don't know if they're all saints or anything like that, but they certainly are people who have the reputation of treating people right. And I think, and it's funny because Josh Harris said this in the presser, and I want to get back to the football side on the field, but this last thing for me, but in that presser, he said something about basically you win with people. And I kind of laughed because sitting right in front of me in that presser was Joe Gibbs. And Gibbs would always say something like that. You win with people. And when you take that approach, then you have a chance. I remember several years ago for ESPN, we had to do this survey of every team and just kind of the nuts and bolts of the operation, all that. And it's even down to the point where it's what is your organizational credo or motto? And I remember having to ask the PR director, Tony Wiley, he went and checked with Dan. He's oh, just win. Well, that's not a motto, right? That's not a credo. It's supposed to be your organizational philosophy. That's not a philosophy. That's a result of your philosophy. Correct. And I think if you ask Harris, you ask Gibbs, it's going to be surround yourself with the right people, or you win with people, whatever it is. So I already like that aspect of it. And I think you have a better chance when you take that approach. And again, you still have to hire the right people down the road. We don't know what kind of a football manager they're going to be or anything like that. But if you can get the right people, then you have a chance. And
getting to cover Gibbs those second go around, the 4 years that he was the coach here, was really great. And he talked a lot about that. He goes,
all the time.
In getting the players, he'd always say the hardest part is we're picking people, and the people have to, we'd make fun of him with the giggles and say they have to be super smart and all that stuff. But he would also say they have to love football.
Right.
You do. And you learn this as you go along, that some of the most talented players don't love it like that. No. And it's a job, for them. They're good at it. It's not that they don't want to be there. It's just, they don't love it. It's not all in on it. And, I could feel the passion from Josh Harris and Mitchell Rales, and Mark Hines too, I'm sure. They grew up here.
Yeah.
They know what it's like. Now, that said, so did Dan Snyder, right? And I like that they said, and I don't think they meant it as a jab at him, but the quote was, it's not enough just to be a fan of the team.
There were a few things that were the opposite of what's happened here, but yes.
Yeah. I mean, they're not putting their head in the sand.
No. And I would have done the same.
They're not pretending that they don't know. I mean, they're there are things that happened here that were unfortunate. They're not trying to sugarcoat anything. And I think that's better served to move forward here. Let's just clean break, but acknowledge the past. And, for this group, I think they come into a situation where everybody wants to give them the benefit of the doubt. The bar's very low. So that's a good starting point for a new ownership group because even if they have a couple missteps, or they're going to make a lot of decisions, and I'm sure some will be controversial and people won't,
and some won't work.
Because, some will be great, and some of them are going to be controversial because they're getting here, late, and it's going to take a year, and they're going to make decisions, and I'm sure we'll talk about all of them as we go along here. But I do believe they'll get the benefit of the doubt because, in general, I think the area is breathing a sigh of relief today that they feel like no matter what hands they're in, it's better hands. That's all.
Listen, and I want to get right to the field. So my last comment on this, I'm going to ask you a question about on the field because we need to get back there. This city was ready to embrace this team again before that Giants game, and the air went out. So like they are there. Like I fully expect a lot of enthusiasm around this team this year. Now they have to go deliver, but I think you're going to start seeing that back again. And I look forward to that for the players, for the area. Like, I've been in this area for a long time. I remember what it was like in 91 before I was covering the team and what it was like. And it's like, it's an exciting, when you're in a city like that, it's fun because there's a lot of energy and all that. So anyways, on the field, let's get there. What are you most looking forward to seeing in training camp?
Sam Howell. I think, I'd like to think that, who knows? Like we don't know if he's good or he's not. I'm watching this series on Netflix about quarterback. When Kirk Cousins was drafted, if you told me he'd be in the league this long as a franchise quarterback, who would have really believed that? So I'd like to sit here and believe that, maybe they have something here. So, but he's kind of everything, at least initially for me. And then I think the defense is going to be really, really, really interesting to watch closely how they practice, like just in general, because I have a full expectation that you're going to see some unique formations with them. I think that they're very versatile, and I wonder how much of a glimpse of we're going to get of that in the summer. And then I'm really, really excited, and this is a couple of weeks away, for the Baltimore week, because I think that that's going to really define a lot. I feel like outside of unforeseen things like injuries or whatever that may happen in the course of the camp, I think that's going to be a big, very telling week about where this group is as they head towards the regular season.
So I am looking forward to seeing how, because that kid's made a lot of strides over the course of the year. He has come a long way, and I know all the stuff everybody saw him in Carolina, but he needed some work, and he admitted he needed some work, but he's put in the work and he's gotten a lot better. So I'm curious to see where he goes. You know what I also like, Bram, that with Jacoby Brissett, I think he was such a good signing. So here's part of my reason for saying that. So, a group of the players were down in Florida working out. It was Howell, it was Brissett, McLaurin was there, De'Ami Brown, a few other guys were there. That was organized by Brissett, my understanding. But what I also had heard is that Brissett was doing a really good job of mentoring Howell. So I think he's got a good situation for him to, and I think that says a lot about Jacoby Brissett. And it's why I thought he was such a good signing, because that's kind of his reputation. But it really, I think it also it helps so much a kid like Howell, who's only thrown 19 passes. There's going to be a lot of pressure on him. And if you can have a guy like that in your corner, and, listen, if Howell slips, Brissett is right there to get that job.
Yeah.
But to have a guy like that there is a big deal.
I mean, initially, I kind of read it like we're going to have a real competition here because Rivera kept saying that. And then when they signed him and, Heineke left and he signed Brissett, I'm like, well, they just got a better player. Right. So there's really going to be a competition here. And then as the spring materialized, there's no one that believes that whatsoever. So it's like Hal apparently has to lose the job,
right?
To not be the starter. But I do think they're going to force him to compete. That's what I hope happens. Like what I don't want to see is an easy road into becoming the starter. I think he should earn it in some way. And so that means playing in the preseason games. That means looking good in practice. And that means that Baltimore week. I really
that's
feel like that Baltimore week is enormous. You're going to get a chance to see him against a top tier team in their facility, and you'll get to see how he performs against them. And then they're going to play them that weekend. And then the third and final preseason game, he probably won't play if he's the starter. So it's the last chance to really get a look. And I think that that's everything this summer to me. So I want to see what happens there.
Yeah. And I'm looking forward to seeing just the timing of his play. And, sometimes when you're in those practice settings as the media and just people watching in general, you focus so much on results because that's what you see. That's what you know. But what you don't always know is what goes into that play, who was supposed to do what, where was the primary read, et cetera. And so, but what I'm looking for, so if you don't always know that, I look for the timing of the throw. When you hit your plan step, are you getting the ball out, whether it's 7-on-7 or full team drills? So I'm curious to see what his timing is like there, the quickness of his decision-making. And, a lot of times too, like, if the defense is working on blitzes, have these guys put in a game plan to work to effectively handle those kind of blitzes? And maybe not. So, but how do you handle those situations? So I'm looking forward to seeing that because that will tell a lot with the timing. And I thought his timing and rhythm was pretty good at times in the spring. So I liked what I saw there. And there's some hiccups, as you would expect. And then if you have a bad day, how do you respond?
Yeah.
My thing on Howell would be, I don't worry about him. Like I would worry about Cousins early on. If you had a bad day, a bad game, a bad series, I think Howell does a better job at putting that stuff behind him quicker.
Yeah, I hope so. The other thing too,
we'll find out.
Like you and I watched the 5 practices we got to watch in the spring, and Bieniemy was on these guys
just a little bit,
and it's understatement for a million little mistakes because he thinks the little mistakes add up to big mistakes, and I agree with him.
I agree with him.
And hopefully it's so the first week or two. Is a lot of that stuff corrected? Is there a lot? I mean, he's going to be loud, but is it going to be a lot less the loud like we saw with corrections constantly happening? Is it fine tuning some of the stuff, or are they still in that space? So I want to see that. And then again, I'm referencing this series because it's so good that I've been watching it. But and since Bieniemy came from Kansas City and they're profiling Mahomes last year, we're seeing a lot of how they practice. And there was one in a recent episode where they talked about on Wednesdays to do this thing called the lab, where they let the players basically kind of make up some plays. And if Andy Reid's down with it, they'll run it in a game if the situation pops up, and they do that. But that only one, it's Pat Mahomes. So I get it. But like two, it's they're so on the same page that they're not worried about everything else. They're letting them be creative. We're not anywhere near anything.
No, you can't get to that point.
Right. Yet. So think about this for a moment. There's a completely new offense with a completely inexperienced quarterback, with an offensive line that, frankly, if we're being honest here, we don't know if it's good or not until week 1.
Correct.
Like you're not going to find that out in the preseason, that unless hopefully there's no injuries, but you're literally not going to know that until we get to week 1 and see them play defenses at real speed that are bringing game plans and see how it goes. So, I would like to be bullish about the offense, but until I see Hal and where he is, until I see if Bieniemy's overcorrecting everything still because out of necessity, or not just because he's, needles them constantly, but out of necessity, are they a little more refined? Are they a little more on the same page? And then until we see the offensive line actually out there in whatever form it's going to be, I don't really think we know what the offense is going to be at all.
Right.
And you might get some hints of what they're going to think they're good at, how run to pass are they going to be, how are they going to utilize people like Gibson? Might they use Robinson a little differently than we think? How many tight ends are going to play? Like, I really think we're going to see all these things in the summer, but how they function as a whole, give me the first month of the season, and then we'll have this conversation again.
Yeah, and that's the one thing. And even talking to people over there, they know that it might take a minute for the offense to come together. So, and I only say that, like, I think the second half of the year is going to be very telling for the offense because it is going to take a few games to come together. I mean, you do have a young quarterback, and I know people there, like, they also are the same place that I am with Howell. I think Howell can be a good quarterback, but I don't know when that's going to happen. And I don't think they know either, because how can you know? There's still a lot of questions, whether about him, he's got to go through situations. How do you handle a situation in a game? You can think he'll be good, but it doesn't mean he's going to be good that he'll be good every game for right away. That's asking an awful lot, especially in a new offense. And so I'll be curious to see, like you, Bram, I think you brought up a good point. What is Bieniemy correcting them on? Is it getting in and out of the huddle at the right speed, at the right tempo, or is it more details of the fine tuning of route running and things like that? And I'm a big believer that they needed this kind of energy from an offensive coach. And I think just the team needs that. And like the defensive players get caught up in his energy as well. And they want to shut him down. And even like the offensive guys, Curtis Samuel, were like, we can't let Bieniemy be the only one who has energy out there. So they've got to respond to that too. That's a good thing. But yeah, what are the things he's correcting them on? And if it's more details, fine-tuned details versus basic things like take control of the huddle. That was an issue in the spring a couple times. And
he was mad at just about everybody with routes or timing or where they were supposed to be. He was shutting down screen passes going, where are you going? So, like, is that still happening? If it happens first couple of days, fine. But I'm talking 2 weeks in. Is that still happening? Because that's where they are? Or has all that sunk in and we're moving on to next level stuff that they're working on? And then that'll be very telling to me. And it'll be obvious. And it'll be very telling.
And I think he still remains their biggest, obviously, off-season addition. And you can't underscore. And this is one of the things I was going to ask you too about, like, you look around the NFL landscape and what people think of this roster outside of this Washington bubble, and whether, national, predictions, et cetera. But I think some of the things that get missed a little bit is one, I have questions about the line. I do think it's better than last year going into the season. Right now, it's better than last year without Andrew Norwell and Trey Turner at guards. And I think Nick Gates should be a solid center. So, but I don't know how good it's going to, I don't know how good it's going to be, but I think it's better than last year. And I also think the Bieniemy effect will be a very positive one, and people it's hard to understate just the lack of confidence they had in Scott Turner by the end. And, we'll see, but I think those things are all positive changes.
What's up? It's Kaylee Cuoco. When it comes to travel, we all have a happy place. I just went to my happy place. I just went to Maui, and it was truly amazing. Priceline has always been about getting you to your happy place for a happy price, with deals you really can't find anywhere else. Like up to 60% off select hotels in Costa Rica, or 5-star hotels for 2-star prices in Cabo.
Go to your happy place for a happy price. Go to your happy price, Priceline.
School is out and summer is here, so it's time to plan your next family adventure. With 8 different levels, 16 courses, 250 climbing obstacles, and over 4,000 feet of zip lines, the Adventure Park at Sandy Spring, located in Montgomery County, Maryland, is the largest ropes course and zip line park in the country. Beat the heat and join us after dark for some night climbing. When the sun goes down, the park is lit up, allowing you to climb under the stars. Check out their glow-in-the-park events for extra glow lights and music throughout the forest. Want to keep your feet on the ground? Grab a bite to eat from the food truck and give axe throwing a try. Perfect for first-timers or experts, their projector systems allow you to throw at traditional targets, play tic-tac-toe, Connect Four, or even hunt zombies. Listeners of this show can get $5 off any ticket by entering the code KEIM23DC at checkout. That's promo code KEIM23DC, KEIM23DC. Now open 7 days a week, this is the perfect time of year to get outside and join the adventure at theadventurepark.com. How much do you think it will help with this ownership change? Does it trickle down to them? If so, how?
Yes, I'd like to think that the energy is just going to be different. I think they're going to hear different things in the community and on Twitter. This is a new era of players that are connected, and they're going to see that the connection's different. And I think that matters. Like, how does that not matter? Like the energy, the karma, just the vibe around the team. Like, how can that not seep down? When it was announced that the sale was going to go through, there were a number of players that went on Twitter and social media and outwardly said, don't blame any of this stuff anymore. Get back on board with us. And I didn't think they were out of line for a second to say it. Like, for the last couple of years, for me, it's been, look, like, the only way this is going to work as a community to get behind these guys, if you want to, is to separate and go, there is one side of the building that is going to be a little off-putting, but the other side, how do you not like what Terry McLaurin is doing?
Right.
Or John Allen, or Deron Payne earning a contract, or Montez Sweat, or Logan Thomas, or Antonio. They have a team you can hug here. Like, they're very, Jahan Dotson was a hit. Like, and he's a good kid. Like,
Yeah,
I
no,
don't know how you can't.
It's a good
see
locker
that.
room to deal with.
Yes, they're a good locker room, and they are very good players. And I know what the national pundits are saying about them, but I'm going to sit there and go back to them and say they had a top 3 defense a year ago that wasn't getting any turnovers, that addressed that need at the top of their draft and got back the guy who should be the biggest playmaker on a defensive line of playmakers. Where did you come up with that they're not going to be good? Or I don't know. They have 4 to 6 Pro Bowlers on this team, and I'm not exaggerating. And you're telling me they're not going to be good? Like, keep telling them they're not going to be good. That is a very good roster. It's not the best one, and there's major questions at the most important position for sure. Right. And I will hear out anybody that goes, everybody's job's on the line. It is true, and that can go either way. That can galvanize people. They could win a lot. And that could go sideways with a lot of guys who are up for contracts, and it could be a powder keg. And I get it. Like, that could go either way here, which is why I think they need to start fast this year more than ever. But outside of all of that, I don't see how this change doesn't have at some level a positive effect, because I think they're going to hear it. There's no way to be in a bubble and ignore the outside noise anymore. And the outside noise is literally different over the last 48 hours than it's been for anybody on this team in their tenure, for sure.
Well, listen, John Allen told the crowd, I've been waiting 7 years to see it like this. And so the thing that, again, that the trickle down is, if they indeed sell out that season opener against Arizona, not only just sell it out, but you create an atmosphere where it's not a 60-40, and with the Cardinals, it wouldn't be that anyways, especially with Kyler Murray not playing. But if it's like, even if it was 70-30, if you can get a 80-20 split again, back to which something like that, like, now you create an atmosphere that these guys want to be part of. And it hasn't been like that. Like, and I don't blame the fans with the home game stuff. I don't blame anybody at all for what they've done. But the bottom line is, it's been a bad atmosphere. So if you can create a better one with your own fan base, they're going to get more excited. I mean, it just,
there's a massive opportunity here, because this is not a glam team coming in week 1. They're not going to travel a bunch of fans. There's not a bunch of Cardinals fans that are going to show up to the game. It's going to be up to all of us to show up and show out for this team and for the organization, and show the owners we're back. Game 2 at home is Buffalo. So we'll get tested. Those people travel. They love that team. It is a premier team. They have how many of those people already bought tickets or secured them on the secondary market, because it's cheap? It was cheap to get into our building, and getting from Buffalo to Washington is not a big deal.
There are a lot of Bills fans in the area.
Yes. So this is not like, this isn't going to happen overnight. I do hope that first crowd, that Cardinals crowd, is extremely full and pro burgundy and gold. But I don't think that this flips overnight. Like, I have a funny feeling those Buffalo fans already acquired those tickets, and there will be a large contingent of people wearing blue in the stadium, and there will be people jumping through tables at FedEx Field. So that's what I expect to occur. And it's going to take some time to get the season ticket base back up where it was, where the tickets aren't available anymore. Because that's what it used to be. Right. The opposing fans didn't go because they couldn't get in. Because they couldn't get in.
And listen,
that's
go, and this, like, you go to any NFL stadium, you're going to have thousands of visiting fans at every game, pretty much, except for a place like Buffalo, where you're going to get, they all have season tickets, whatever. There's some unique situations, but by and large, you're going to get that. So and I know, like, these players are already looking at that, like, they might be able to play in an atmosphere that it will be fun again at home.
And this goes back to the other point, that this team deserves that. Separate out what was happening around that team. You don't like that team that they're putting out there. And I get it, though. It was complicated, like extremely complicated. You can love McLaurin. What's not to love about him, right? But the guy who's signing his checks was making it hard for you to spend the money to be there. And that, I get it. I understand it. I get it. And I think we're just dawn of a new day. And the slate is not clean, but it's cleaner than it was. And I think the door is open for everybody to go, okay, let's let bygones be bygones.
It'll be a normal situation. Listen,
I still like those colors. I still like that team. I still like what they mean to our community. I still think the NFL is the biggest, baddest product in this country, and certainly in this area. This is a team that has a legacy. Let's start rebuilding that legacy again. They haven't been a loser the entire time of this organization. It's time to change all of that again.
Right. And if nothing else, there'll be a normal operation. So a couple more topics. How much pressure is on Ron Rivera right now?
Ton. I mean, obviously, a ton. This is for a later date. I was talking to someone about this recently, but this is for a later date and not for now. But I'll just say this now. Like, if this is his last year, and it's a big if. I don't think there's any certainty to that whatsoever. I don't even want to insinuate it. But if it is, and they do start winning, like afterwards, and these are all ifs, right? Second level ifs. I hope nobody forgets what he did over the last 3+ and now 4 years for this organization, the stabilizing force that he was for them amid all these other things that were going on. And if there is anybody that has earned having some breaks this year and having an over 500 record and maybe getting a playoff game, it is him. Like, no matter what this group decides in the offseason, I am really rooting for him. He has done a lot for this organization, more so than most other people. He's been a really, really great representative. He hasn't gotten everything right. We can parse out the coaching decisions or personnel decisions, and there are a lot of them that are fair criticisms of his tenure, but there are a lot of things that guy stood up for, had to speak on, had to deal with, that had nothing to do with him and was outside of his character. And so I am rooting for him. I don't know whether they're going to win or not. And for all the reasons we already discussed, there's a lot of questions about what their record really could be. Because the reality is, if your quarterback play isn't very good, you will lose. You will lose too many games. So hopefully that's not the case for him this year. And if they have a pretty good season, I hope they catch the breaks, because even whether he is here beyond this season or not, he deserves it. Nobody in that building deserves it more than him.
And, my word on that one too, is what we don't know is all that he had to put up with ownership. And I know, like, I've talked to people here, like, you have no idea some of the stuff that they've had to put up with the last few years. And, even like the pressure to get that Wentz deal done, it was that's why they ended up overpaying for it, because there was a ton of pressure from ownership to get it done that particular day. That's why they end up giving up 2 third-round picks. The Colts knew it. The Colts knew they were under pressure. But it's a lot of things like that.
You know what, though? But Rivera went to them. I can't absolve him. He went to them and said he wanted them in the first place.
That's not the point.
And so Dan says, get the deal done. Okay, well, that's what a good owner does.
Not the way he
shouldn't
did
have been the
not
option.
The way he did it.
He shouldn't, John. He shouldn't have been clearly he shouldn't have been put in front of him and said, we advocate acquiring him. So
that's fine. That's fair. But the way it's done, it's not normal, and that's what I would say. But anyway, that's a minor thing, because you're right. That was an organizational failure. That's fine. There will be more stuff that comes out much later. Really quick on the defense, biggest concern.
I think my biggest concern really is it is awkward when you have a lot of guys on expiring contracts, and they do have that. So I'm a little worried about that part of the business part of it. I will be interested to hear Rivera talk about, I hope someone asks, have you approached the ownership about extending anybody? Because remember, they were on a wait and hold until this got done. And there are a couple, and I'm guessing it's Cam Curl and Montez Sweat, that they would potentially approach and potentially do something with. And I wonder what the new ownership has said about that. Are they, I wonder how much Rivera will reveal. I wonder if they just said, nope, we're playing out the season and chips will fall where they may, and we'll make our decisions off of that. Or if they are listening to him and saying, if we can get the right deal done with, say, a Cam Curl, we'll do it. So I'll be interested to hear how that goes. Yeah. And then outside of that, I got to tell you, John, until I see something otherwise, I really do believe their defense is going to be good to great, somewhere in there. I don't see bad. I see good, a bottom line of good, and potential if Forbes is like Sauce Gardner in year one of being great. And therein lies my real optimism for winning on the field, is I think the defense should be top 10 to top 5 again. And this time around, probably have some turnovers, which they have not had. And if that starts happening and games start getting flipped, I think all of a sudden you're going to see a record that surprises a lot of people.
And I'm going to give 2 names to me that can go take this team from good to great. Chase, and then Jamin
Yep.
Davis. Davis got to really kind of ascend in this year, but Chase, if Chase is back and has a
Yep.
really good year and maxes his potential, then they could be a really, really good defense. Last thing, obviously a lot of talk about name change and should they, will they, whatever. My understanding is the same as it was the other day, that, it's not a top priority. And I've kind of been consistent on saying it was never going to be a top priority, but then, would you rule it out down the road? No, because I don't know what they're going to think down the road. And I can see them at some point addressing the situation. Like, should they do it? And to me, once you go down that road asking if you should do it, then you're probably going to take that next step, because, but I think it's a long process. But I'm curious what your take or your thoughts are on that situation, on that topic.
After hearing what Magic Johnson said, and then how Josh Harris said it, because he was asked twice.
Mm-hmm.
If you didn't hear that they're not only open to changing it or that it would happen, then I think you're not listening closely. So I felt from the get-go, I'm same as you. All I heard from anybody who was close to them that I could get information about said to me, this is not going to be high on their priority list, which is why I kept saying over and over, they're not coming in here and doing that.
Correct.
So you need to lower your expectations if you think they're going to do that. But I would always answer that question. Go check the tape on this one. I would say, I haven't talked to them and I haven't heard how they answer this question. Correct. And they're going to be asked on day one, what do you think of the name? And how they answer that question is going to be very important. And the way that they've answered that question basically tells me they're going to. I don't know when, but they're going to. It's not going to be this year, and it may not happen for a couple of years, and it may time up with a new stadium, or who knows. But I am pretty convinced after hearing the way they talked, and then I don't know if you got the same thing, like the reaction from the people I've talked to about this up until this point, all of them were like, whoa, like they left this door. It wasn't cracked open. It was, we're about to kick it open. We're just not going to do it now.
Right.
So I think I read that as it will happen, because all he said was, if that's what the fans want, well, I know what the fans want.
Well, because it's funny, because on that question, it was Matt Paris from the Washington Times asked him, what do you think of the name? And his comment was, it doesn't matter what I think. It matters what the fans in the city think. Well, we kind of know what they think. So I'm with you on that. Like, and this is not a report, and I know you're not reporting it as
I'm not reporting it, but
I think if you're reading it, then I think it's hard not to say like, yeah, I can see it. My thing was always, it's not a top priority. They have other things they have to do first, and then you get to that, because it takes a massive amount of effort, resources, time, etc. And there are so many things they want to do first. But clearly, to me, again, it's almost like if you say, yeah, I'm considering retirement. Well, once you start considering it, you're down that road, right? And I think the same thing is here. They know what the name is. They're all from this area.
Yeah, come on. Of course they know. These people know the organization. So of course they know. I'm so proud of myself too, John. When they finally announced the name, I had to make a decision. Do I change my touchdown call? Do I put Commanders in it? And I didn't. I won.
There you go. We'll end on that one, Bram. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
Hey, everyone. Wanted to bring you a special interview with John Hines, the owner of Adventure Park, who has been sponsoring this podcast for over the spring and into the summer. Wanted to talk to him because he's a fan of the Washington Redskins /football team Commanders. So he's been a big fan of them for a number of years. Wanted to talk to him about what does it mean now after this ownership change. But also, I know a lot of you are barbecue fans. So am I. You know that. And so is he. So we talked barbecue, his favorite, his go-to recipe, the one that his kids always ask him to do, and it's called swine apple. Stay tuned, because you're going to want to try it after hearing from him. And then we spend a couple minutes talking about Adventure Park, why he thinks it's a good activity for anybody to do. And it sounds like it can be challenging. It can just be fun, but it's something you probably might want to try out. So here's my conversation with John Hines, the Adventure Park owner. John, thanks for joining me. And we're going to talk about Adventure Park in a couple minutes, but I am curious, you're a Commanders fan, correct? And so I'm curious.
Absolutely.
I'm curious what this change in ownership means to you.
I honestly never thought I would see it happen. And I grew up a loyal Skins fan. Stood in line to get tickets during the strike season. Had season passes for 20 years, but we eventually gave them up, and just out of frustration, because I was raised knowing that this year could be 10-6.
Right.
This year we could go 11. This year we might get 12. But after 2 decades of we're going to struggle to get 7 wins, it just took the wind out of my sails. It got to the point where the only reason to go to the game was to tailgate.
So when the ownership change is announced, what's the feeling like inside for you?
It's not quite euphoria, but extraordinary optimism. I'm willing to just write off the last 20 years of experience and try and bring back in my brain the John Riggins and Sonny Jurgensen and Joe Theismann and all those guys and those great days. And I just want to act as though the last 20 years didn't happen.
I think you just spoke for a lot of people with that sentiment. And, do you think, I've always thought that there's still a lot of passion in this fan base, and there became a lot of apathy because of exactly like you said, where's the hope? And then you have all these issues off the field. Is this enough to get people back?
I think so. I think that the new ownership team is stepping into an absolute void. It's not like it's a burning cauldron. It's a void. We desperately want good people with quality skills and commitment to making this team great. And there's every reason to be very, very hopeful that Harris and Rails and Magic Johnson and the rest of that cast that they have assembled are going to do a good job, are going to do a great job.
I think they can be reignited pretty quickly. And I think it's as long as, build something good. You need to, still need to win, but you can do that and ask for patience with a group that maybe other can reward that patience, or at least not embarrass everybody off the field. I think that's kind of a low bar for what people have been through. Just don't embarrass the fan base.
The reality is, I think that, if sometime in the last 2 or 3 years, the Commanders had stomped the NFC East and won the Super Bowl, an awful lot of fans would have gone an awful long way to just sort of forget about the first 20 years of Dan Snyder and go, okay, he's finally learned. It only took 7 rebuilds and embarrassment and failure, but he finally figured it out. So now we're going to support him. Well, he didn't have the skill set to make that happen.
All right, so let's talk a little barbecue first. And I know we were talking, you've got a specialty, and there's a YouTube video out there about it. Tell us what that specialty is.
That is the swine apple. Simply stated, you peel a pineapple, you core the pineapple, you take baby back ribs that you've already cooked, and you pack it into the core. And you put the ends back onto the pineapple, and you pin it with skewers. And then you wrap the whole thing in bacon. And then you put that whole thing on the grill, low and slow, until that bacon is crispy. And it's just amazing.
Okay, first of all, anything with bacon is good.
There you go.
And so what was the process of getting to that recipe?
my daughter saw an article about it and said, Dad, can we do this? And I believe we did it for my son's graduation. We had a graduation cookout. I think we did it for his cookout. Yeah.
And you've done it ever since.
And it is a family favorite now.
So where can they see that on YouTube? Because I think they're going to want to see it and just kind of go step by step. Where can they see it on YouTube?
Just search YouTube for swine apple. Well, I think mine was the first one out there. Many people have done much better videos about it than my daughter and I concocted 13, 15 years ago.
So with the baby back ribs, I mean, that, could you use it just with regular spare ribs too? Or?
Sure. Or even just pulled pork barbecue, but whatever you're packing in there, that needs to be cooked before it goes in, because the pineapple won't get hot enough to cook anything inside.
It sounds really good. So I think
it is. It can be a mess too. You can also, as I had a grill failure the last time a barbecue grill failure the last time I did it, and I had to pull it off of the grill, and I finished it in my oven, and that worked fine. Put it in a convection oven and let it rip. Lost a little bit of the smokiness, but part of my grill failure added extra smokiness. Had a fire in my grill. So,
well, and I know people will listen and watch the podcast and they know about Adventure Park, but tell me, what is it that, people need to experience for themselves when they go there? What is it that you just say, like, you got to try this, you got to try that?
We're all about what I call individual challenge and achievement. In the parallels to snow skiing are spot on. When you go skiing, there's the mountain and there are all those color-coded trails for difficulty, and you take on whatever challenge you're up for, and every time you do it, you get a little bit better. Well, of course, the adventure park is the same way. We have 14 trails in our main section. They're color-coded for difficulty. The easiest trails you can do, if you can walk from the car down to the park, you can do the easiest trails. The hardest trail is the hardest climbing trail in the country. It's going back to the ski analogy. It's like the face of a great ski mountain. Most people will never come down the face of a great ski mountain. Most people won't try, and most people who try the first time come down on their rear end. They don't do it great. But there's that guy that comes down the face and it makes it look easy. That becomes aspirational. And that's why we have this one insanely hard course, the Gauntlet, because we want it to be aspirational. We want every person in our park to look up there and see somebody making it look easy. And in here or in their heart, they say that's going to be me someday. And because the trees continue to grow and we continue to tweak the courses, and people's experience and balance and strength changes every time they come out, no two experiences at the adventure park are the same. You can go ride the same roller coaster 20 times and you get the exact same ride 20 times. You can't climb one of my courses 20 times and not have 20 unique experiences, because your own skill and experience and strategy improves as you go. So we have many, many guests who are regular climbers who climb a couple of times a month. We have one woman who's been with us for many years who climbs on average 160 times a year.
Wow.
She comes to the park. She definitely loves our season pass.
And tell me, what else the last thing, what else do they need to know about this? Whether it's, you talk about season passes or just other things, if you want to bring the family, what other things can you do? And what else
a couple of important things. We take climbers as young as 5. The 5 and 6 year olds have to climb with their parent or adult that brings them. But our oldest climber so far climbed on her 94th birthday.
Wow.
One of the fun things about the park, and it used to be unique, but a lot of other parks are following the lead. We climb at night as well. We have about 2 miles of little LED lights strung through the park. We call it twilighting. It's enough light to climb by, but you certainly know you're in the woods at night. But especially on these hot summer days, climbing in the evening is really nice. And then as we get to fall, we fire up the fire pits, and the whole place just has a special glow about it. The other thing I'd like to share is that last fall we opened family axe throwing, adventure axes at the park. We have 4 axe throwing lanes, and we've really tried to set it up so that it is very family friendly. I don't know I don't know too many families that will take the 14-year-olds to a bar to throw axes, but you can bring the family to the adventure park to throw axes, and we've got staff there to show people how to do it. And we use projected targets, so you're not just throwing at a painted round sign. You can throw at zombies, or you can play blackjack with the axes, or battleship, or throw at a regular target. And that's turned out to be real popular activity for groups of friends and families who might not be that interested in climbing in the trees.
That sounds a lot of fun. And John, I appreciate you coming on and joining me.
Well, thanks for having me. Appreciate it. And hail to the Commanders.
Yeah, at least for now. We'll see what happens.
Still getting used to that one. I have hanging on my wall. I have an original score of "Hail to the Redskins" by Bernie Breedskin, autographed by him. It's can't sing it anymore, but I can keep the memento.
There you go. Thanks, John.
All right, thank you.
That's it for this episode. Thanks to Bram for joining me, and also thanks to John Hines for joining me. And like I told you, I'll be back on Wednesday with an update after practice. I'll be doing a practice update every time they practice. So, talk to you next time.